And we're back.
We're back.
I'm sorry about that.
Me too. Lame. I'm having some fun.
This is my video, no fun.
Okay. Sorry for the interruption. Bummer. Okay, well, we're back anyways.
Yes, we're back anyways.
And Facebook is letting people know that we're back.
Yes, I'm so sorry about
We're
that.
sorry.
But everybody will be on again in a moment. Oh, wow, that was fast. Awesome.
That was fast. Okay, great.
Please forgive us.
Please forgive us for the interruption. Sometimes technology is not our favorite, but we make it work.
We'll make it work.
We make it work.
So,
Awesome.
The question is, do men get intimidated by women who make more money than them? Absolutely they do. And I would highly suggest that no matter how much you love that guy, until they deal with that and figure it out and become okay, don't do it. Don't date them. Don't date them.
Love it.
All right. Someone asked, because we talked about forgiveness in the last one and making sure that you have forgiven a person before you move on. Someone asked, what if you yourself are the person that needs forgiveness? Well, it's the exact same deal. I would not recommend you move on until you've forgiven yourself. The same thing. You got to forgive somebody else, you got to forgive yourself. Otherwise, you will drag, same concept, you'll drag all the habits and bad choices and lifestyles that you are associated with that unforgiveness, you'll just drag them into the next relationship.
How would you suggest that they deal with that?
Well, my first recommendation is you come join us in 2 weeks in Orlando.
Orlando, baby.
At First Steps to Success. That would be a good way. Otherwise, everybody's forgiveness journey is a little bit different. Some it takes different time. Some it takes needing to talk to somebody. Some it doesn't. And whatever that is for you, if you don't know how to forgive at all, you need to join us in 2 weeks in Orlando at First Steps to Success, because truthfully, forgiveness is one of the very first steps to success. Success in marriage, success in business, success in raising a family, success in finances. It's important. It is grossly important, and nobody ever talks about it.
Forgiveness, you mean?
Forgiveness, yeah.
Nice. Nice.
We got a question. Is there a good time frame for between being friends to dating to marriage? Because I've heard of people getting married in under a year. That's a great question. Lots of people get married in very little time. Like us.
That's fast.
And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I think it means you're going to learn some things about your partner after you get married that maybe you wanted to learn before. But the truth is, we're back to the first session where if you have two people who will choose each other, it doesn't matter.
That's true.
You get married in a week. As long as two people are willing to choose each other, you're going to make it work.
Totally committed.
So that would be my big answer to that one.
Sophie said, love you too. I love you, Savella.
Yeah, you know what? If you find somebody who's going to choose you for the rest of your life and you're confident in that and you're willing to choose them, just go for it. We run into the Bible. The Bible actually tells us, don't burn with passion, go get married.
What's that mean?
Meaning, if you're struggling with lusting after the other person and you can't keep your hands, lips, or any other thing apart that maybe you should be because you're not married, go get married. The Bible tells you to do that. So either you're disobeying or don't have self-control or whatever. There's nothing wrong with getting married quick as long as you're both willing to choose each other. People are laughing.
Hands, lips, or
anything else?
Anything else apart? Okay.
That's good. Yeah, we talked in the last one about basically who makes the first steps in a dating relationship. And, we talked a lot about what is the women's place in the first steps of getting a date. And Chelsea asked, do we have any examples for the ladies of making it more comfortable for the guys to answer those questions or that advance? Because she said she read in the past, you know, a lady might
so cool.
might drop her handkerchief and walk away from it so that a guy would pick it up, and then he would come and have a conversation with her. And
I dropped my handkerchief. Like, how cute is that?
And I will say that that would be the Victorian and the Elizabethan era, most likely, which was an area, there was a whole era of subtlety. We're talking, you gave flowers during that time period. Every flower had a meaning because that bouquet had a message, whether it was a message of, I hate you and you're going to die tomorrow, or
what color is
I
that
love
rose?
you. Yeah, it's not, no roses in that bouquet. Or, you know, I am passionately in love with you. Would you meet me tomorrow? Like, everything was subtle. And the men were trained to look for subtle. Like, don't get me wrong. In almost every case, a woman can out-subtle a man. Men are, like I said, the last one for the most part, pretty dense. Not stupid, not slow. They just don't pick up on a woman's subtlety, and we're back again to different brains.
Wow.
We're back again to different brains. So I wouldn't recommend you be subtle in today's day and age. We're not in a subtle age.
That's true.
In today's day and age, you got to be blunt, because a guy goes home and being like, well, she talked to me for an hour. Does that mean she likes me? Or am I just like every other guy? I mean, she talked to my buddy too. Like, don't let it go there. You want him to pursue you.
Wow.
Be clear.
Wow.
You know, I think you're cute. I would love it if you asked me out on a date.
Oh my gosh, if I would have said that to you.
I would ask you out on a date immediately. Oh, okay. What about tomorrow night? You know?
That's so cute.
Right. I mean, if it makes it easier for the woman to make that first move, the truth is, in today's society, it is easy to believe that a woman wanting a date has a lot more opportunities than a guy. That may not necessarily be true, but the truth is, if a guy says no or doesn't call you when you give him his number, Sevilla was clear. I don't doubt that. If a guy doesn't call you, you could get someone to call you the next night. For most guys, it's not that easy. Right? If a woman gives out her phone number 3 times, the chances that she's going to get 2 calls is very high. If a guy gives out his number, he might not get any calls.
Why do you say that?
This is just what I've seen. I could be wrong. This is my opinion.
Okay.
But
I went to this super, super strict church from like age 18 to like almost 23. And the pastor told us that we should not be even, oh my gosh, it was so strict. Talk about naive. So I went to the super duper 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 strict church, and I didn't even give out my phone number in those very formative years when you're like learning how to navigate and communicate in society and relationships. My pastor had told us, unless a man meets the qualifications of someone that you potentially would want to marry, you have no business even sitting at a table with him at lunch at college. I was like, oh my gosh, okay. So I'm talking about chopping off your dating eyes at the knees. It was so terrible, so rough. And I didn't give out my phone number at all. So when I'm asking like what makes you say that, I had the experience of not giving my phone number out and being groomed to be super duper guarded. So I didn't give my phone number out. So I didn't really get to experiment with that. And then when guys would ask me for it, I was groomed to like be like, no. Yeah. So not that I don't believe you. I was just wondering what made you say that, because I don't have experience there. Gotcha. Go, baby.
people are shocked.
People are shocked. Why are you shocked? Why are you giving the wow face? Throw me a comment. Why is that shocking?
So, and actually, I would say being blunt will work in your favor, because you're going to see really quick which guys are willing to not take offense, step up and work. You're going to know right away. because they're either going to step up and pursue you or they're not. And that hopefully is one of your qualifications that you're looking for, someone who's going to step up and lead, right? If someone who's just going to be offended and hurt that you were so forward, well, they're just
Okay.
they're just going to be offended and hurt later when you're forward in your marriage. It's just going to happen.
That's cool.
All right.
What else you got?
We didn't have any more questions. So
Yay, we get to get into the fun stuff.
we're going to see how this one goes. And again, if you're just joining us and you haven't watched the first 3 sessions, I highly recommend you stop watching this one and go watch the first 3.
Cool.
It will help with this one greatly. I don't want you to hate us because tonight might be a little harsh. It might not be, but
It might not be.
Because tonight we're going to talk about sex.
Yay.
We're going to talk about sex before marriage. We're going to talk about a little bit about sex after marriage. You're probably going to learn some things about
Us
About
that you would
us.
never imagine.
you
That's
never would have
fine.
imagined.
I'm going to turn this towards you. There we go, babe.
And it's going to shock you a little
Sorry.
bit. And you're going to learn some things. You're going to learn some things. So let's talk about, what should we talk about first?
Your video, honey. It's Brad show.
Yeah.
It's the Brad show.
Let's talk about habits. I've mentioned habits a few times. And the truth is, before we're married, we are building habits that are going to be very present in our marriage.
Ooh.
And they can be good habits or they can be bad habits, just like the rest of life. But let's say having sex before you're married. Having sex before you're married is going to be a habit, but the habit isn't just having sex before you're married. The habit is having sex when I'm not supposed to. That's the habit. We're going to talk in a little bit about chemicals and addictions and what your brain does, but you're going to get a chemistry lesson tonight. That's going to be fun for anybody who likes chemistry. It's going to be really fun. But because we're going to make some things explode, like your minds. So you're creating a habit of having sex that is wrong, is bad. Let's just for simplification's sake, some people don't believe it's bad, but let's just for simplification's sake, and according to the Bible, we're saying that when we have sex before we're married, we're having bad sex.
What does that mean?
There is a piece of your heart that knows you're not supposed to be doing it.
Gotcha.
There's a piece of your heart that knows you're not supposed to be doing it.
You're breaking the rules.
Now you've created a habit of breaking the rules. When you're married, all of a sudden that's within the rules, but the habit isn't sex. The habit is breaking the rules.
With sex.
So now you're going looking for ways you can break the rules. And it's not that you're doing it deliberately, it's your choice, but it's not totally deliberate. Your heart and your mind are looking to recreate what you've been creating up until now.
Because that's sexy to you in your head.
So, regardless of whether you believe in the Bible or not, I believe very strongly that whatever you believe, there is a piece of your heart that tells you this is wrong when you have sex before you're married. There's a piece of your heart that is, because I believe we were created that way. We were created to experience everything associated with sex with one partner at a time, meaning our spouse. When our spouse dies, if we're still alive and we get married again, okay, but you know, we were created to experience all the chemistry, all the emotions, the physical amazingness that goes with sex with one partner. Just one. Amazingness. And we are training our body to not do that when we have sex before we're married. We are. Why did I say that? I was going somewhere.
You started off by saying that if you create the habit prior to getting married of having sex that is somewhat in your mind, heart, or spirit, secret, forbidden, against the rules, breaking the rules, that inside your head, your heart, your spirit, you're now connecting sex with breaking the rules or doing something that's bad. And so even after marriage, you may want to continue to like connect with your partner, yet something inside of you is seeking to still break a rule because that's sexy. You're seeking to have this sex that like is forbidden.
Right. Absolutely. Let's take the Bible for a second. The Bible gives a lot of laws and rules that it doesn't explain. Let's go into Leviticus and look at the laws about eating. The Bible just says don't eat pork. It doesn't say why we shouldn't eat pork. It just says don't eat pork. It's only in today's day and age with the science and that we've developed, we understand that you cannot kill the parasites in pork no matter how much you cook it. Therefore, you're getting parasites in you. It's only because of today's science. But this was a culture that didn't need to know why. God said do something. They said okay. And we've kind of gotten out of that in today's day and age. We need to know why. Why can't I have sex before I'm married? Well, the Bible doesn't say why. It just says don't. And so we have an entire culture of Christians who are like, well, that wasn't really clear enough to me, and it's something I want. And, I'm a good person, so okay. So let's talk about the chemistry right now, actually. We know because of today's science that sex triggers dopamine and oxytocin in your brain. Those are the same chemicals that are released when you do heroin, when you gamble, when you drink.
Wow.
They're chemicals associated with addiction. They are addictive. And so we are creating a chemical addiction before we're married. But here's the funny thing about dopamine and oxytocin. Their levels are increased the greater the excitement. So when we have sex and we know it's wrong, our risk level has gone up. Therefore, the levels of dopamine and oxytocin have gone up. Now, we get married to that person. We're no longer taking that risk. We're allowed. So several things are going to happen. Either we are being risky and, experimenting with things that are like risky with our spouse because more risk, more dopamine.
50 Shades of what? Just kidding.
Yeah. Or we're having sex with our spouse and we're bonding with our spouse, but our brains are chemically addicted to something more and we're going to go looking for it. Whether it's through pornography, which we know we're not supposed to do, great risk. Whether it's through, infidelity, huge risk. But the dopamine is huge.
Sexting, huge.
Sexting is huge.
And it's so accessible.
And it's easy. It's right. It's easy. Your brain goes, I know how I can get dopamine, and no one has to know.
And take that risk and get that little shot in the arm of feeling sexy, wanted, adventurous, excited that you no longer experience with your spouse because now you're allowed to have sex with them because you got married. You took the risk factor out and now you're addicted to something that you can't achieve in your sex life.
So we have our dopamine and oxytocin levels are not near as high as we've trained our brain to want before we're married. Also, our love isn't as high. Let's talk about when you meet somebody and you fall in love, your brain starts pumping other chemicals into your brain. Now, I don't have the names of them, but you can look them up. And they're telling you, they're like the love drug. You don't see any of their bad qualities. They're just the most amazing thing, and it's always sunshine and roses when you see them. And that lasts about 3 months at the most.
Wow.
Until your brain can't sustain producing those chemicals anymore. And that is why a lot of people go from relationship to relationship to relationship, is because that's the chemical they want. But it means that when you get married, it's been longer than 3 months. I'm I'm not feeling those chemicals anymore. So now you're with a partner who is not feeding your chemical addiction and you don't feel as in love with as you used to. We have a recipe for insane disaster that most couples do not survive.
Wow.
And it's all chemical. But it's a chemical we have chosen when we decide to sleep with our partner before we're married.
Marriage.
Because if you have not slept with your partner before you get married, sex is exciting through the roof.
Wow.
Your dopamine levels are going to be sky high.
Wow. That's so good, baby. Thank you for talking about that.
We have a very, very, unfortunately not unique perspective on all of this because we did not wait. We didn't wait this time. We both waited before our first marriages.
Oh, and if someone has not watched the previous videos, like go back and watch them because Brad and I both, this is our second marriage, and both of us were really groomed in Christian environments and waited to have sex until we were married with our first marriages, with our first spouses. We both went through a divorce, found each other, and for each of our own reasons, we just kind of chucked caution to the wind and decided that we weren't going to wait. At the time that we were walking through that, I remember, if you watch our last video, you know that I was married to a pastor's son, and it ended really poorly. And so I was very jaded, super jaded. And I remember I was going through a season of asking God, like, I did it all right the first time and I still got screwed. So why? Why wait? Who cares? I know I want to be with this guy anyways. Like, who really cares? And I remember thinking it was kind of funny, actually. I went through this really wild streak, actually, after my first marriage totally dissolved. And the pain of that, I was just like very rebellious, I guess you could say. And I've always been a little bit of a rebel, but it went overboard. And I remember, you know, just starting to get to know Brad, and we'd had these conversations of like, what would it be like if we didn't even kiss each other until we got married? Like, what would that be like? And we had those conversations, and we talked about making it a goal, and then we didn't. And it was we had set up a couple things to try and have accountability. Okay, first of all, if you are planning on not sleeping with your future spouse, if it's a goal of yours to not kiss them or to not sleep with them, you've got to have like accountability that is like bulletproof. Absolutely. And I didn't have a strong enough desire to want to not sleep with Brad. I didn't have a strong enough conviction that it was the right thing. I had been so jaded and burned from my first relationship that I really kind of thought, kind of like darned if you do, darned if you don't, who cares? And so while I had set up some accountability, I didn't actually follow through with the accountability, meaning we were at a business conference together. I wasn't sharing a room with him. Like, I didn't want to look bad. I didn't want to look like I was, like shacking up or whatever. Like, I didn't want to look stupid. So I room shared with one of my best girlfriends. And I think my sister Kelsey was at that conference. And I remember, I had already done some really suggestive things when we were on video chat, like talking to each other. Like, I'd be getting ready for work in the morning. He had seen me, I think, like in my bra or something like that. So I had already broken covenant with his eyes. I had already totally introduced him and heightened that sexual excitement by doing things over video. And then when we saw each other in person, all it really took was me not having a strong enough conviction level, and my friend and my sister, who I room shared with, both saying, we want to grab a coffee before we go down to this business conference, so we're going to jet. It was literally within like 60 seconds, I'm on the bathroom counter having premarital sex with somebody that we had this conversation. Like, we aren't going to go there. Like maybe we shouldn't. but my conviction wasn't strong enough, and we totally did. And I actually thought it was funny. For a good year of my life, I thought it was kind of funny. Like, I joked about it, and I was like, whatever, who cares? And then it came back to haunt us in our marriage, and that's why it's important that we do this video. I think it's really important that you understand the chemistry behind this. I want you to understand that when you begin to have sex with your partner prior to marriage, and there's a conviction level inside of you that says, I kind of know that this is the wrong thing, and yet you just push it aside and you do it anyways. You're introducing an element to your sex life of risk, of breaking the rules, of doing something that you know is bad. And then once you're married, that element of risk, because you're meant to have sex with this person, you're supposed to. It's your God-given right and your ability. You've introduced this element that it's so something you can't recreate once you're married, because you're no longer breaking the rules. You're doing what you're created to do. And so even if you think it's funny, even if you have lived a very sexually promiscuous life, I would challenge you and I would charge you to stop. Just stop it now. If you're entering the dating realm, I would challenge you and I would charge you, if you're looking for accountability, literally, I'm gonna just with all my heart tell you, wait. Wait. Don't walk down that road. Because as Brad said, it's almost like, we talked about insecurity. We talked about having a spirit of fear when you go into a relationship. Of, will this person accept me? Will they love me regardless of my flaws? And sex is such an amazing thing when it comes to creating hormones and chemicals in your brain, because once you are married and you know everything about this person and you find out that they are flawed and they are human and they do have issues, sex is like the magical chemical romance that makes you just not see all that stuff about them. That, it's really wonderful if you are just doped up on love and you don't see all their flaws and you do feel magically addicted to this person. And I think that's what sex is supposed to do. But when you're doing it prior to marriage, you are getting this screen, this love filter of chemicals that is making you so connected to this person that you stop asking those questions that are so critical to the dating process. There's a really funny video that I'm going to pop in the comments from Dr. Creflo Dollar, and he was speaking to the girls in his congregation, and he's telling them, you need to ask these critical questions. Do you have a job? Do you have a bank account? How much money do you make? Could you pay for your funeral if you did die today? What sex are you really attracted to? Like, what's your motive here? Are you marrying me because potentially you're trying to hide something? What do you actually like to do in your sex life? Like, gosh, there's a million questions. Do you pay for the gas in your car? Whose vehicle are you driving? Do you own the title to that vehicle? There's so many things. What kind of food do you like to eat? Do you intend on looking like this in 20 years? How many kids would you want to have? Will you have hurt feelings if we don't have kids? How's your relationship with your parents? Like, was there a part one and a part two to breakups and marriage and divorce in your family? Because I don't really want to be the part three. There's so many amazing questions that you skip because you are like love jonesing for this person, and you're no longer looking for those critical details that you need to know prior to marriage, because you're like blinded. You don't see them. So if you are dating, if you're even thinking about moving towards marriage, I charge you with everything in my heart. I've done it both ways. Wait. Wait. Wait.
It comes down to asking yourself a question. Do I want a very successful marriage right from the get-go?
Wow.
Or do I want a whole bunch of pain first? That everybody has to ask that question. And if you're sleeping with them before you get married, you have answered that question with, I want to go through a whole bunch of pain first. In fact,
Ugh.
I potentially want to get divorced.
Ugh.
There is no other option. You are going to struggle if you've been sleeping with them before you're married.
Wow.
And I'm telling you, you don't want that. Both of us have been through divorce once, and we nearly went through it twice.
Yep.
Because I was unfaithful. Because of the habits I created. Habits that started way back. Way back. You know, we talked about porn a little bit yesterday. Habits that start then, where your brain starts looking for what it's not supposed to do chemically. Chemically. You mix that with a generation that doesn't believe they're worth loving, we are screwed. And that is not a pun.
Oops. Yeah.
So, do you want a successful marriage right from the get-go? If your answer is yes, you gotta stop. And that's stop everything. That's no more sexting, no more, what's it called when you send pictures?
That's sexting.
No more sending pictures, no more talking about sex, no more allowing yourself to be alone in a room or a house with that person. Don't give yourself the opportunity. You have to withdraw.
It's like Brad said, there's so many amazing chemicals that are associated with sex that if you are already sleeping with your potential future mate, I would say literally you are probably addicted. Cut it off cold turkey right now and get accountability to do so, because it's like a drug and you more than likely are addicted.
Or get married tomorrow. I don't care how far apart you live. Get married tomorrow and work it out.
And work it out, which is what we ended up doing. Brad and I were already sleeping together for like several months when he came to me and said, this is amazing. By the way, thank you to Jane Mock, Mama Jane, because I guess that she had asked Brad, like, what was the word that she used? What was the word?
I don't know.
Gosh, there was a funny word. It was kind of like, are you being proper with her or something like that? And it was at, again, it was at a Danny Johnson event. I think he went to Creating a Dynasty without me in Atlanta because I was hanging out with my mom. And he came back from that event and he was like, I think I kind of want to stop having sex. And of course, okay, let's talk about what?
That causes an argument.
That's an argument and a half. Okay, let's talk about this. If you have any type of rejection in your life, if your parents got divorced and you feel like one of your parents rejected you, if you've ever been bullied, if you've ever been picked on, if you've ever felt like any sense of rejection in your life and you're still carrying that around, which I was at that point, man, when Brad came to me and said, you know, I really feel that maybe we should stop sleeping together, I was like, but why? Like, I was like, do you not love me? Am I not good enough? Is there somebody else? Like, why would we stop now? And obviously I was totally addicted to the connection that I was getting from this person who I was not married to. And when he took away what I felt was like such a great connection between us, I was like heartbroken. I'm like, really? Are you serious? Why? And that was what was one of the closing questions on us actually getting married, because he took away like my favorite thing. I'm like, seriously? Really? I was so mad. However, I was like, all right, if you actually think you can do it, then I'll do it with you. And the next time that we saw each other, we got married, which is really cool because I was addicted. I had already had the cookie. I loved the cookie. I loved the sugar rush from the cookie, and I needed the cookie again. So we got married fast. But don't think that it did not come with a whole lot of pain, feeling rejected, a lot of drama, and then, you know, what happened later. Yeah, so I would just highly suggest stop now and make a choice to cut it off cold turkey. Get serious accountability if you are sleeping with your future spouse, and deal with the issues now, because there's a whole lot in that person and in yourself that you are not seeing because you're too busy seeing what's under the clothes.
Right. It blinds you. All
It
those
totally
chemicals
blinds you.
blind you.
Totally.
And that person you're sleeping with may not be a good spouse for you.
Yes.
But you have no clue,
You
and
don't know.
you won't until after you get married. And then you're gonna be like everybody else and be like, man, I married the wrong person. So they say the statistics are that 70% of marriages will admit to having some form of infidelity.
This is so good.
70% will admit.
Did you hear that?
That means way more than 70% have infidelity of some form in them. Of marriages, period. Across the board. Doesn't matter if they're claiming to be Christian, Catholic, Sikh, anything.
And we found that out after we were walking through it. I was like, seriously? 70% of marriages battle with some form of infidelity, and that's 70% that will admit it. So there's another whole 30% of people who might be trying to keep up appearances and not say anything about it. So that means look around the circle of the people that you currently hang out with and know that even if they're not currently, even if they've saved their marriage, even if they've gotten counseling, 70% of the people around you more than likely have been through infidelity. High number.
It's in your best interest to set yourself up to not have to go through that.
So good, baby.
And the way you do that is you cut it off right now.
Yeah.
The way you do, if you're married, like I had to think about this one today, because the truth is, compared to the risk of sex before you're married, sex after you're married, it's a little duller. It's not so you gotta spice it up. So I had a counselor tell me once, Arnie, I mentioned his name yesterday. Yeah. He said, within a marriage, there's no boundaries on sex. You guys, as a married couple, you do whatever you like. As risky as you like, as long as you agree on it.
As long as you agree on it.
Go for it. Throw some excitement in there. Blast a little extra oxytocin in there. Hook yourself to your spouse a little bit more.
Wow.
You know? I mean, let's just ask the question, why is sex, as a married couple, and all you married couples know, I mean, all you non-married couples who've had sex know, why is sex where you might get caught that much better?
It's that fear element / doing something wrong element.
Your oxytocin and whatever the other one was I keep saying is through the roof.
So time to go jump in the back of the car. Just kidding.
But,
been there, done that. So fun. Grabbing some water.
But truthfully, in the end, it comes down to if two people want to make something work, you can make it work. All right? Therefore, go get married tomorrow if you want to have sex with them. Just make sure you both agree. You're going to make it work no matter what. Or, if one of you will not follow, I don't care. We could have a whole discussion about sex drive. You know, in general, a guy's sex drive is higher than a girl's. That is in general. It's not always the case. Between Xtina and I, it's not the case. So if it's the woman pushing for sex and the guy doesn't want to, and if she won't follow the boundaries you were trying to set up, stop dating her. You are better off to be not with that partner and creating the habits and getting rid of the chemical addiction so that you can have a great marriage later than you are sticking it out. I'm sorry. You know, as much as you might love that person, you need someone who's going to work with you, who's going to be on the same path with you. Mm-hmm. Someone who's going to choose you. And if you're the one who can't keep from pushing for sex, go get some help.
Because it truly is a chemical addiction. 100%.
I read some articles today about it. It says the closest similar reaction in the brain is heroin. So you're taking away somebody's heroin after they've had it every day for however many years.
Oh, wow. And you think that that's not going to tick off your partner? Like, I don't think that we are created very much to start having sex with our lover and then have to stop. You know, that's part of the element of fun. That's part of the element of love. Like, we're created to start having sex with our spouse, and then that's a lifelong bond. So if you're starting having sex prior to getting married, it's during the dating process, and then one partner or the other decides that you're going to cut it off, that is setting up for one of the biggest blowouts of your dating life. I know that there's some people who are going to watch this who are walking through this right now, and all I can say is stop cold turkey, get some counseling, or go get married tomorrow, but know that you might still need some counseling because you have introduced an element of risk to your sex life that once you get married and the sex is not as risky, you will find yourself flirting, you will find yourself potentially sexting, texting, sending nudes, looking for someone else to recreate that risk factor with, and it's called infidelity. It's called cheating, and it's no fun, especially for a new marriage.
And
Not fun.
you know, there's probably some people who are like, well, who are you to tell me all this? We can tell you this because we first tried without, then we tried with, and we've been through the infidelity that is caused because of it.
So not cool.
You know, I don't know that we're the greatest authority, but you can't say we have none. We are nearly not married. We have nearly been not married. The two of us.
Yeah.
You know.
And let's get real. All right, so we're both believers. We love the Bible. I'm just going to say, in the words of one of my favorite pastors on the planet, Paula White, the devil does not want you to have a bad hair day. He wants to steal, kill, destroy, obliterate you and your life. And it's not because he hates you so bad. He hates your Heavenly Father. How do you really tick off a parent? You could be mean to a parent all day long, but go after their kid and see how they're going to react. So if God is our Heavenly Father, the enemy just wants to mess up your life and leave you busted and sick and dead because it hurts your Father's heart.
And, you know, I would say that is probably the biggest reason our society today, and we're talking across the world, North America, Europe hit it before us, but struggles with sex in general. Sex has become not taboo. Now you can do anything with anyone or anything, and you know, there was an article 2 years ago about somebody marrying a merry-go-round, like getting married to a merry-go-round, or sex with animals or sex with the same sex is huge now. Like, in my opinion, the sole purpose is to destroy marriages because you are powerful when you are in union with your spouse, when you're heading the same direction with your spouse. But he's getting it started when we're in high school or earlier.
Way earlier.
Or way earlier. If he can start us having, you know, doing pornography when we're 13 or 14, he's affected our marriage 10 years in the future.
Right. Or even, let's just go here because I'm pretty much an open book, and I know that there's so much freedom in honesty. I know that I'm going to get someone out of this particular video that's going to come up and ask me for the biggest hug on the planet when we're in Orlando, because here's the deal. If you walk through childhood sexual abuse, that is a direct attack on your sexuality and on the future of your marriage, because as Brad just lightly touched on same-sex marriage and same-sex relationships, I will be very honest and say up until I was about 22, I wasn't even attracted to men. I had gone through such traumatic sexual abuse as a young person and even a toddler that as I walked through my teenage years and my 20s, I wasn't attracted to men. That only leaves you with one other option, friends, and that is I was more into girls, honestly. So my first marriage, I remember my mom asking me, like, why are you attracted to that guy? And I said, Mom, it's because I'm not attracted to the person who assaulted me as a little kid. And whenever I see men that look like that, there is not even a smidge of desire. And so I married the total opposite of the person who had hurt me and sexually abused me as a kid. Then after that relationship, that marriage just totally dissolved and fell apart, I dated women for a while because I was like, wow, men are just not what I want at all. And so please never ever feel, if you are someone who has gone through feelings of homosexuality, or if you're currently in a homosexual relationship or a lesbian relationship, I just want you to know that I love you more than I could ever tell you. I understand the feelings. I understand those who are homosexual and they have a desire to want to have a marriage and have kids and have a lifelong partner, because I experienced that. And I just remember the hurt from being abused as a little kid, the feelings of disgust when it came to the opposite sex, the feelings of feeling safe with the same sex, and then eventually the feelings of desire of going like, everything in my life is a choice. If I can fall in love with a man, and I can fall in love with a woman, and I can fall in love with a 60-year-old, and I can fall in love with a 38-year-old, and I can fall in love with a girl, and I can fall in love with a Mexican, and I can fall in love with a black guy, and I can fall in love with a white guy. Everything in life is a choice. And it comes down to falling in love with someone's spirit and their soul and their mind and their vision. And once I got a grasp on that, I can't tell you the freedom that came. And just realizing that, like, when I made my list of what did I want, I didn't have physical features. I knew that it was my choice, that I wanted to be married again, and I wanted to be married to a man, and I wanted the possibility of having children with that man, and that was my choice. That was my choice. And so on my list, I put things like, I just want him to be taller than me. I want him to be a leader in the community. I want that if we choose to have kids, that we're going to be his top priority. I wanted someone smart, and that could come in any package, really. But my choice was that I wanted to be married to a man. So I just want to give someone that hope and that encouragement and that inspiration that if same-sex desires, if that was put into you specifically through sexual abuse or through the dissolution of a marriage, I just want to tell you that everything in your life is a choice, and that you can fall in love with whoever you want to fall in love with. I don't think that there's one person on the planet for everyone. I think that it's your choice. I think that I could have married Brad, or I could have married about 50 other guys, but I choose Brad, and Brad chooses me, and that's why this thing works. Even after the infidelity, I remember, the day that I found everything out, and I remember just being in such total shock, because we covered this, I think, in maybe video number 2, that you need to be asking these really hard questions. And when you're sleeping with somebody, you're not asking, and so some girls, especially if you carry rejection from a dad or from a past relationship in your life, if you carry this rejection, you're so much more worried about, is he still gonna like me? Am I gonna be found out? Like, am I good enough for him? And I was thinking thoughts like that. So I accepted and received something that I don't think I should have in our marriage. And I think that just the habit that we had gotten into by having sex prior to marriage, of like having that element of risk. Brad was still looking for that element of risk and that element of feeling sexy and special and important. And so there's sexting. And I remember the day that I found it, feeling so shocked and going, this is my choice. I've got to find some answers. And so I reached out to people who are smarter than we are, wiser, have more of a track record, have longer marriages. And I just began to ask questions. I remember the day it happened, I was in such shock, but I just knew I've got to find some answers here. And so I reached out to someone who has a long-standing marriage. She's coached by the same coach that I am. I knew that she could have some answers for me. So I reached out to her and 2 other women who I wanted their results in my life. Because the truth is, you don't want to just ask anybody when it comes to very sensitive issues. in legal matters, in business matters, in marriage matters, in child raising matters. You don't just want anyone's advice. And so I was looking for somebody who could give me some solid answers. And I remember the first woman, telling me, honey, I've never walked through that, but I'm going to help you find somebody who has. And through that, I got a referral to someone who now I very much respect, love. I regard her words with such high esteem. And I remember, she just called me and talked to me on the phone for a good hour. And I was so angry. But her words were so inspiring because she had walked through something very similar. And she said, honey, it's your choice. If you walked away from your marriage right now, nobody would blame you. Nobody would blame you. And yet, if you are going to make the choice to stay, you have a couple options. First of all, every morning of your life, you need to learn how to become an endless encourager. Men rise to the occasion of what you speak over them. And this is for married women specifically. Your husband is going to live up to what you say about him. And so if you don't have anything nice to say, you need to go for a walk and not say anything. If he doesn't ask for your advice, unsolicited advice is typically never welcome. So if you think that he's doing something wrong, it's not your job to mom him or coach him because he doesn't want to sleep with his mom, as we covered in the last video. And you're not his coach. You're his wife. You're his helper. You're his partner. You're his friend. You're his covering. In the same way that he can be a covering for you, love covers a multitude of errors and sins. And so, love him. Speak life. Pick out the good things. Find him doing something right and tell him about it. And then the next thing that was crucial that she taught me in that season was that everything is a choice. So if you want to get over this thing, you can wake up in the morning and choose to forgive him. That's your choice. You don't get to throw it back in his face. Does the behavior need a course correction? Absolutely. And Brad was committed to that. Brad was committed to a course correction of the behavior, and he was committed to getting non-female conversations going, because that's an open door, and Brad's going to talk about that this video. But getting solid accountability with guys that he could trust. So he was committed to the course correction, and then I had to be committed to not throw it in his face. Not to bash him over the head with, look what you did wrong, and you're a piece of crap. That was a commitment I had to make. And it truly did take about 40 days. I kept on calling this woman about once a week and just crying and saying, I hate him so much. I just want to punch him in the face. I want to knock his head off. And she's like, you have that right. However, I want you to every day wake up in the morning and forgive him. And it's going to take a little time, and one day it's just going to stick. And I'm going to tell you, about 40 days into this thing, it just stuck. So I don't know who that's for, but it's important to share, because those are the things, those are the choices that led us to where we sit today. Can you talk about male-female social media, texting, relationships?
Yep. The truth is, the closer you get to somebody, the more beautiful they become.
Ooh.
It doesn't matter who. It doesn't matter who.
Wow.
The closer you get to somebody, the more beautiful they become.
That's good.
Now, this is this is a big danger in opposite sex relationships. And I'm not saying you can't have any opposite sex relationships.
It's true.
But they need to be structured and limited and careful, because the closer you get to somebody, the more beautiful they become, the more attractive they become. Mm-hmm. And it works both ways. If you're always talking to somebody of the opposite sex, you are becoming more attracted to them. You cannot get around it. It doesn't matter. You may loathe them, but if you talk to them every day, eventually they will be attractive to you, because you will get to understand them and be understood. So if you're
connection, that's what everyone's craving.
Everybody wants it. Everybody needs it. We're designed to need it. And we're designed to need it with our Heavenly Father, whom we are broken from and trying to get back to.
Wow.
And one day we will. But right now, we're craving it. We are looking for it. And in a lot of instances, it's easy to talk to the opposite sex because we desire their approval anyway. So
So good.
if you don't, the opposite sex should never be your counsel. You should never be running to if you're a man, you should never be going to a female who's not your wife for counsel. You should be talking to other wise men. If you're a woman, you should never be complaining about bad things
To another
to
man.
another man because you two will get close.
Off limits.
Don't do it. And it doesn't just happen in person. Don't do it on the phone. Don't do it over private messaging. Don't text it. Don't nothing. Find another woman.
Yep.
And more importantly, find somebody who supports your marriage before they support you.
Yes.
That's big. That is huge. Your
So
wise
good.
counsel should always support your marriage before they support you, because you're going to do some dumb crap. You're going to do some dumb crap. And the wise counsel, it's got to be chosen by you and strong enough to be like, well, you shouldn't have done that. What are you going to do about it?
Yep.
Because they support your marriage more than they support you.
Yes. Impartial and pro the covenant. Pro the covenant of marriage. That's what you're looking for in accountability. You're not looking for a girlfriend who's going to just, oh, honey, he's such a jerk. No, it's not what you're looking for. You are looking for someone who's going to say, okay, I get that. What did you do? And did you do anything to provoke? And did you pray about that thing? You know, I don't believe in women staying in, you know, a super abusive relationship. I do believe, just like in video number 1, both partners need to choose each other, you know. So if it's a 50% choosing in the marriage, I'm not telling you to stay with somebody who's hurting you, who's cheating on you, and who is not committed to you. Like, I'm not saying that. I am saying if you are committed to your relationship, you have to find people who are impartial to your feelings, who are going to tell you the truth about your covenant and about your actions and about what you potentially are doing wrong if your choice is to stay with them. That's what I found, and it worked amazingly.
And I say all of this because I had many inappropriate relationships with the opposite sex while I was married. I had a lot of them. And why? It didn't start out because I was looking for it. It started out because I was just talking and understanding, and we would get close and attraction builds because we get to understand each other. That's how it works. That's why dating in our society is important. Getting to know somebody, it builds attraction. But just like a married man talking to a woman or having a relationship with a woman who's not his wife, while it's encouraged and greatly possible, it's got to have boundaries. So your dating's got to have boundaries. Dating has to have boundaries too. And sometimes, especially in today's society where sex is such a powerful push, those boundaries have to be drastic. Like, don't ever be alone with them. Sometimes that's a boundary that needs to be set.
Sometimes.
And it doesn't prevent you from getting to know them. There's lots of public places you can be that will allow you to have private conversations. You know? It might be don't kiss. I am so proud. I have a friend, he just moved to the United States. He didn't kiss her until they were married, till their wedding day.
Yeah.
And, you know, I had been married
So
before
awesome.
and had chosen to not, I didn't want that. But, man, when I look at the results,
The results are impeccable.
they didn't have any, well, I mean, we haven't had that deep a conversation. But, according to what he says, they didn't have any sex of any kind before they were married.
That's awesome.
Why? Because their boundaries were set up in such a way to prevent it from being a temptation.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and I used to fly, once a month I would go down to see her, or she would come up to see me, and I'd stay at her house.
Right.
Well, I was a dumbass. What did we think was going to happen?
Right. There's absolutely no accountability there whatsoever. And neither did I want it. I was not some like saintly girl who was like, oh no, don't touch me. I was like, awesome. Come hang out.
Elizabeth, you say you want your children to wait to kiss for their wedding day.
That's amazing.
That's a great thing to want for your kids, and that's a great thing to train them, but I would advise against trying to force it.
Oh, yeah.
Teach them, let them know, but let them make their own decision. Like, let's talk about the influence a parent has on a young person's sexuality. I remember going camping with my dad. I was probably too young for it, but we had, the talk. But other than that, sex in our house was not talked about.
Wow.
Never mentioned. Like we didn't really know about it.
You never heard your parents?
Once in my entire life did I ever, hear my parents. And so I was left to figure it out on my own.
I'm still going back to that. They must have been really quiet.
I don't know. We were never allowed in their bedroom, and it was always on the opposite side of the house. So,
well, maybe that's it.
But
okay.
But we didn't know anything about it. We were never taught that sex is a beautiful thing between a husband and wife,
Wow.
and outside of that, it is beautiful and wonderful, and will screw me up. We never learned that.
Wow.
We were just told don't, which is what the church does today. The church says
just don't. They don't
And-
explain the chemicals or
and
why.
all these young people who are absolutely brilliant are like,
So brilliant.
well,
Why?
when the government tells me don't, I question why. When my teacher tells me don't do something, I question why. Because
Wow.
hopefully our children are being taught to obey but question authority. And if they don't have a good
Wow.
reason, for instance, why can't I cross the street right now?
Wow.
So we apply that to our knowledge of sex. Well, the church says don't, but they don't have a reason why. They just say it'll be better for me. I don't have any evidence of that. Look at all these effed up people in my church.
Woo.
So I wish, I don't know, because I never was part of a home that talked about sex.
Wow.
But I know that my plan for our children will be that sex is something that's talked about. They will understand that sex between their mom and I.
When they are teenagers, they're going to be like, we can't come home. Mom's loud. Just kidding.
They're going to understand that sex between their mom and I is a beautiful, wonderful thing that has taken a lot of work.
Yeah.
That we had to struggle to get to where it is because of the choices we made before we were married.
Exactly.
Like, these are things that gotta be. These are things young people need to hear. They may be like, "Oh, mom, that's gross," but it's only gross because somebody is telling them that's gross. If it's not you,
Wow.
it's somebody else that is a bad influence in their
That's
life, and
true.
you can change it.
Wow, that's so good. Wow. And I had kind of the opposite experience. My biological mom, she's kind of a little awkward about talking about sex. Like, she didn't really talk about it that much. And yet, as I got older, my mom went through a divorce, and I don't know, my mom became kind of like a party animal when I was in high school. And so I watched my mom being a party animal with my brother. And I was so turned off by that I was like, I just want to run in the opposite direction. And I became like totally straight edge, got involved in a good church that was borderline a cult by the time that I left. And I was so looking for structure because our home life wasn't super structured. My mom, I don't know, she just went through some stuff. But my point being is it wasn't shoved down my throat at like a young age, like, you better wait till you're married, and I just don't know why you're gonna have some soul ties and you're gonna get a demon if you have sex. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was never explained to me. All I knew was I didn't want to get pregnant as a teenager, because so many people that I knew got pregnant as teenagers, and in my viewpoint, it was like their life was over. It was just my experience being like 14, 15, 16 and seeing my friends get pregnant. And it was like they dropped out of school, they didn't get a job. They were, their parents were mad. It was just a nightmare. And I remember thinking, okay, well, if I keep my legs closed, I won't have that problem. So, it was like I ran in the opposite direction of what was happening in my home. So, you can be the best possible guide for your kids, and you can suggest things and be a safe place for them. But at the end of the day, if you shove it down their throat that they better not ever kiss anyone until they're married, you might end up with, I don't know, not the result you want.
Premature grandchildren.
Premature grandchildren. Wow.
That wasn't very
I
nice
don't know.
of me. I'm sorry, but
Just be a safe place for your kids
Right.
to be open.
our children need to understand that life is about their choices. That life is about building habits.
Yeah.
That life is about what's their goal. What is the goal? Is the
Right.
goal just to be close to somebody? Because if the goal is just to be close to somebody, they're gonna have sex before they're married. It's guaranteed. But
Oh,
if the
wow.
goal is to have an amazing sexual relationship with their spouse,
Right.
well, in order to do that, I have to not fool around in any way before I'm married.
I'll say this too. I had waited until I was married to have like amazing, awesome, groundbreaking, great sex the first time around. I was like 22 or 23. However, I think that the sex was so connecting for me that first marriage. However, the guy that I married had been previously married, had been sexually active, and had also been sexually active between his last marriage and me, that I don't think that it was as strong of a bonding agent as it should have been had he also abstained. So that's another thing to think about too, ladies, ladies and gentlemen, both. If you are currently not having sex, you're currently a virgin, I am so freaking proud of you. And just as you are prospecting for dates, just know that it may be more difficult for your partner or your spouse. I do believe people can change. I do believe that, like, with God, anything is possible. I do believe that there's no condemnation for those who are in Christ. So if you are prospecting for dates and you are a virgin, my first recommendation would be to find someone who's in the same pool as you so that the sex is amazingly connecting once you do get married, or find someone who has abstained for quite a period of time between their previous relationship and they are not in that love drug addiction that sex is, and they're not thinking about, imagining, or mentally jogging back to a previous relationship. It's just you and them, and that covenant is just so tight, so strong, so connecting. Because I remember being married that first time and being like, just crazy about the guy, like after we started having sex, and I didn't feel like he felt the same way. It felt like it took months and months for the sex to be that connecting for him, whereas for me it was right off the bat because it was my first, it was just phenomenal and important, and to him it wasn't that important. And I remember that feeling just being devastating. So just as you're prospecting for your spouse, your marriage, your sex life, as you're thinking through that, just be aware of that little point.
We've, I think, gone on for quite long enough
Oops.
since we've been saying the same thing over and over again.
Over and
for the
over
last little
again.
while. But it is important.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't get to tell you what to do.
No.
And,
It's your choice.
in this day and age, the belief is that we get to choose our own life and do what we want and find our own heaven. And if that's a belief you have, totally. All power to you.
Yep.
We love you, and I'm looking forward to the next time I get to talk to you.
Yeah.
But if you are a Bible believer, if you're friends with Jesus, then you know what's right and you know what's wrong, and you need to make your goal something that's going to help you keep that. There's no middle ground. The Bible doesn't say, well, maybe you shouldn't. The Bible says don't.
Wow.
And it says it because it wants us to have the most incredible marriage possible.
Wow.
Not because it's trying to keep us from something.
Right.
So
It's good stuff. Are you doing another video?
we loved talking to you. And actually some of the things that came up in these 4 sessions have made it that I think we're going to do one more.
One last video.
What day should we do that on?
Tuesday.
We could do Tuesday, not Tuesday.
No.
No, it's either got to be tomorrow or Wednesday.
We have a call with. We have an appointment at 6 tomorrow with Anderson.
Let's make it on Wednesday. It's a little bit separated from the 4 things we've been talking about so far, but we're going to talk about being a team with your spouse in the next one. There's been several questions. Been watching a lot of the comments, and there's some things that are not talked about in society that we're going to talk about. It's that even amongst people who love Jesus, they think some things about it that I don't believe are correct, and we're going to talk about them because they are enormously damaging in a marriage.
Ooh.
So
Unity.
we're going to talk about it.
Unity.
We're going to talk about being a team.
We like unity.
So please send your questions, because again, we'll answer questions before the next one that come from tonight. If you got any questions, or if you've been watching the previous ones and you have questions, ask your questions in the comments or send us a private message, because we'll try to answer those. Please, again, if you're a woman, don't private message me. We talked about that tonight.
Yep.
This is why.
Now you know why.
This is why we do this, is because as much as I love you, and I will always love you, I don't want to be that close to develop an attraction that will be harmful for my marriage.
Right.
Because this is my queen. This is my queen. I don't want another one. And if I were to let my boundaries slide, then I will be allowing the possibility of other queens in my life, and I don't want that. So it's not that I don't care about you. It's not that I don't love you. It's that I care about this woman more. And that's the way it's supposed to be.
And thank you for honoring that. We've gotten some PMs that have both of us. Thank you for honoring that. If you're watching, now you know for future reference. If you're a guy, I basically ignore them when guys PM me, or I add my husband instantly to the conversation, or I refer the men. Oh, you have that problem? My husband could probably help you out. That's just what we do. And that is why, because we went through some very challenging moments in our marriage, and now we are 100% about protecting the sanctity and the unity of our future. So thanks for honoring that. You're cool. You're cool.
Awesome. So we will see y'all on Wednesday night. It'll be the same time. It'll be 8 p.m.
Okay.
And I'm excited. Thank you so much
for watching,
being a part of these last 5 days.
It's so cool.
It's been really amazing. And it's been really cool to see a group of people who believe that it can be different, because our society is messed up. It's hugely messed up. And there is so much pain, and there are how many unhappy marriages do you know? How many broken marriages do you know? How many people do you see who have never been and do not understand that you need to be willing to choose your partner? How many people are just walking around trying to find somebody without making a list? Society is set up to fail. And somehow we find some miraculous successes in there, but we find so many more failures before they get there. And we don't want that for our children. We don't want that for this generation. We don't want that for the next one. We don't want it anymore.
And we're so grateful for the people that when we walk through this, such a trauma, and literally we're on the brink of divorce for such a long time, that we just had some really loving people that shared their wisdom with us, and we are just wanting to pass it on. Because Lord knows, if 70% of people go through infidelity, it means it needs to be said. So, yeah.
So we love you. And
we love you.
We'll see you on Wednesday night.
Wednesday, 8 p.m. Who's going to watch? Later.